Chapter 70. One Killing Spree. I was just walking on the street, and they abducted me, Zoe said helplessly. Upon hearing this, Caspian felt even more furious. He felt that the flying dragons considered themselves above the law by grabbing Zoe off the streets. Caspian, you must save me. I don't want to face these hideous faces, Zoe pleaded. She had a deep impression of Caspian from their previous encounter, and she knew that he and the woman with him were formidable. So, with both of them in the room, she had hope. Don't worry, you'll be safe, Caspian reassured her calmly. Why are you here? Did you happen to see me getting abducted and follow me all the way here to rescue me? Zoe didn't expect that Caspian would appear just as she encountered danger. So, she thought he had seen her getting caught. You're overthinking it. I came here for revenge against Quentin. I didn't expect you to have been captured by him, Caspian explained. Hearing his words, Zoe understood that he had come to seek revenge for his foster mother. She thought that since he was seeking revenge, he must have come prepared and wouldn't have come with only Sylvia. Sylvia was a general officer, and such a person wouldn't put themselves in such a dangerous situation. Perhaps there were more people outside. At this thought, she felt more at ease. Revenge. Just the two of you, Quentin asked. We don't need any extra help to deal with trash like you. The two of us are enough to wipe out this place, Caspian said coldly. At his words, Zoe was taken aback. She felt Caspian was rather careless to come with only Sylvia. After all, this was the Flying Dragon's territory, and their boldness was certainly quite risky. Ha ha ha. You dare to come to the Flying Dragon's territory with just two of you. I don't think you're here for revenge, but to seek death. Quentin laughed audaciously. Paradise Clubhouse. Right. I'll turn this place into Hell's Clubhouse, Caspian said. Get them, Quentin ordered, not wanting to waste any more time. The Flying Dragon's members drew their guns from their waistbands and aimed at Caspian and Sylvia. Just then, a series of gunshots echoed throughout the entire room. Quentin's men fell one by one, lifeless, on the floor. This sudden turn of events left Quentin and Zoe stunned. What had just happened in the blink of an eye? At this moment, Sylvia was aiming two guns at Quentin. Earlier, when the Flying Dragon's members were about to attack, she had already opened fire. Having been Caspian's companion on the battlefield for many years, she was top-notch in terms of reaction speed and strength. So, taking care of these low-level Flying Dragon's members was a piece of cake. There was no need for Caspian to intervene. Sylvia could easily eliminate the members of the Flying Dragons. Zoe, seeing the men lying lifeless on the ground, was trembling with fear. The scene was much too bloody for her. She had never expected Sylvia to be armed with guns, and to have killed all these people. She thought, isn't she afraid of being caught by the Office of Inspector General? In the heat of the moment, Sylvia hadn't considered so much, and had taken care of them all. After all, Caspian's safety was the top priority, and other matters could be dealt with later. Anyone who harmed the Dieteranian god of war would have only one outcome: death. Since they came here to seek revenge against Quentin, it was inevitable to have a few deaths. However, Sylvia didn't finish off Quentin. She was waiting for Caspian to do it personally. After all, Quentin was the one who killed Caspian's foster mother, so he should be the one to exact revenge. Do you have any last words? Caspian said coldly. I don't want to die. Quentin began to tremble and panic. He hadn't expected Caspian's companion to be so formidable. You killed my foster mother. Do you think I'll spare you? Caspian said as he slowly approached Quentin. Terrified, Quentin kept retreating, but as Caspian got closer, he had no way to escape. At that moment, there were hurried footsteps outside. Without hesitation, Sylvia aimed her guns at the door to the room. The previous gunshot. Noises had surely caught the attention of some Flying Dragon's members. As the footsteps approached the room, Quentin's face brightened. He knew his men must be coming. On the other hand, Zoe became more nervous. She wondered, with so many people rushing in, will Caspian and Sylvia win? When those people arrived at the entrance of the room, they found the corridor outside was already filled with dead bodies. The sight shocked them. "Hurry! Get them!" Quentin yelled out in frustration when he saw his foolish men still looking around. Finally, his men understood what was happening, but it was too late. Sylvia had already opened fire. Gunshots echoed once again. Quentin's men, crowded at the door and unprepared, were all shot. "Ah! Ah!" Pained screams echoed as the men fell to the ground, one after another. Quentin watched his men drop like flies and realized that there was no hope left. After Sylvia exhausted the bullets in both of her guns, she pulled out a submachine gun. The gunshots earlier attracted more men to the private room, but their fate was the same without exception. Sylvia, holding the submachine gun, aimed it at the entrance to the room and unleashed a furious spray of bullets. All the Flying Dragons members, who had gathered at the door, were met with nothing but death. With the submachine gun, Sylvia prevented anyone from entering the room. Having anticipated this situation in advance, she had prepared plenty of magazines. In just a few minutes, the corridor outside the room was filled with corpses. The remaining Flying Dragons members dared not advance any further. With dozens of bodies outside, a thick smell of blood permeated the entire room. Some blood even seeped into the room. Zoe couldn't bear to watch any longer. Paradise Clubhouse had turned into hell. Sylvia remained vigilant, keeping her submachine gun trained on the door. If anyone appeared, she would deal with them immediately. At this moment, Quentin realized he couldn't rely on his men to save him. If he wanted to survive, he had to take matters into his own hands. So, when he noticed that Sylvia's attention was not on him, he suddenly charged toward Caspian. Chapter 72, Hold Him Hostage. Caspian saw Quentin suddenly charging toward him and delivered a punch right to Quentin's forehead. Ah! A miserable cry echoed as Quentin felt his head ringing, and he was sent flying backward. A loud thud filled the room as he crashed into the wall. Following that, Quentin lay on the ground with his injured head. Bloodstains covered a large area on the walls. He was shaking, his face pale, and he was utterly defenseless. Zoe couldn't believe that Caspian had managed to disable Quentin with just one punch. Caspian was always treated as a good-for-nothing, but now she realized how well he had hidden his true abilities. Unfortunately, Willow wasn't here right now. Otherwise, she would undoubtedly be shocked to see him like this. Many people were aware of how powerful the Flying Dragons were in South Lake City, but in front of Caspian, they seemed utterly insignificant. Initially, when Zoe found out that the Flying Dragons members killed Lilith, she believed that Caspian would never be able to seek revenge successfully. However, at this moment, she understood that the Flying Dragons, feared by many, were like ants in front of Caspian. At this moment, her admiration for Caspian grew immensely. Caspian didn't rush to kill Quentin immediately. Instead, he first untied the ropes from Zoe. "Caspian, with all this violence, won't you get caught?" Zoe asked with concern, flexing her wrists. "Don't worry, I haven't killed anyone. It's all Sylvia's doing. She's a general officer. I don't think it's a problem for her to take down some thugs and wipe out a gang," Caspian reassured her. "That's good. Then, please get me out of here. I don't want to stay in this terrifying place," Zoe said, looking at numerous corpses and the blood-stained floor all around. "There's no rush. Let me finish Quentin first," he replied, then walked toward Quentin. At this point, Quentin had lost all ability to resist. Seeing Caspian approach furiously, he was overwhelmed by fear and quickly begged, "Please, don't kill me. Just tell me what you want. We can talk it out. I don't want anything from you. I just want to see you die in fear. When you killed my foster mother, I didn't see a shred of compassion in you." As Caspian said that, he stomped his foot hard on Quentin's chest. Quentin's features contorted at this attack, as he couldn't breathe. "Caspian, this place has a complex layout. I'm sure the Flying Dragons have set up an ambush. It won't be easy to get out, especially while ensuring Yanez's safety," Sylvia reminded Caspian as he was about to finish off Quentin. At her words, Caspian understood what she was implicating. If he and Sylvia just broke through the enemy's ranks, it would be relatively easy, but with Zoe in their care, the situation became more complicated. They were exposed, and the flying dragons remained hidden. If the flying dragons decided to strike, protecting Zoe without harm would be almost impossible. To ensure a safe escape, they had to hold Quentin as a hostage for the time being. At this thought, Caspian lifted his leg and told Quentin, "I won't kill you today, but in 5 days I will. If you want revenge, come after me. I want to see what the flying dragons are really capable of." Caspian's words mirrored what he had said at the York residence. Quentin still had some use. Killing him too quickly was too lenient for him. It would be better to let him struggle in endless fear for a few days, and deal with him later. When Quentin heard that he had a chance to survive, he was overjoyed. With some time to prepare, the flying dragons could certainly kill Caspian. "Sylvia, give me a gun," Caspian requested. "Here." Sylvia understood his intentions and handed him her submachine gun. The next moment, Caspian aimed the gun at Quentin's forehead. "Your life is in my hands. Tell your men to stay back, or you'll meet your end." "All right, don't be impulsive. I'll order them to stand down," Quentin replied, realizing that Caspian was using him as leverage to escape from Paradise Clubhouse. Yet, as long as he was alive, he would have plenty of opportunities to seek revenge against Caspian. "Follow me, Zoe. I'll get you out of here," Caspian said, taking Zoe's hand. "Okay." The moment he took her hand, she felt a shiver down her spine, and a blush crept onto her face. Meanwhile, Sylvia subdued Quentin and led him outside. "Guys, don't do anything. I'm getting out of the room." Quentin shouted several times, prepared to leave the room. Now that he was a hostage, he couldn't afford to let his men open fire. Or else, he would surely meet his demise. Hidden in the dark corners of the corridor, Quentin's men relaxed upon hearing his words, assuming that he had taken care of the enemy. However, when they saw Quentin slowly walking out with a gun pointed at him from behind, their jaws dropped. Their leader was being held hostage. Seeing this situation, none of them dared to take action. Caspian and Zoe proceeded behind them, leaving the private room. "I'm scared. Can you protect me?" Zoe had never experienced such a situation, and she felt quite overwhelmed. "Don't worry. No one can harm you," Caspian reassured her. As they left the private room, Zoe saw the floor covered in corpses. Instantly, she trembled in fear, her legs quaking. "There are too many bodies here. I can't take another step." She quivered as she spoke. "Hold on to me. I'll carry you out." With that, Caspian lifted Zoe by her waist and leaped over the corpses. Shocked, Zoe let out a shout. However, the experience felt surreal, almost like a dream. With Zoe in his arms, Caspian stepped over the bodies and eventually reached the end of the corridor. Then, he held Zoe's hand and continued walking, with Sylvia following behind them. "Put away your guns quickly. Don't point them at me," Quentin shouted as he saw his men aiming their weapons at him. His men immediately complied, lowering their guns and aiming them at the floor. They were shaken since their leader had been captured. Sylvia and Caspian continued to move forward, one in front and the other behind. After the earlier gunfire, Paradise Clubhouse's customers had long fled the scene. Only a few make a sound. Sylvia kept Quentin subdued, while Caspian held Zoe. They made their way unimpeded to the main hall. At this moment, Paradise Clubhouse was eerily quiet, with the music and lights completely turned off. "Caspian, you and Yanez should go ahead. I'll cover from behind," Sylvia said vigilantly. Chapter 73, The Furious Supreme Leader. "All right." Caspian handed the submachine gun to Sylvia and prepared to leave the Paradise Clubhouse with Zoe. Quentin, now a hostage, saw his men starting to gather around. "All of you, stop right there. Do you want me dead?" he shouted in panic. If Sylvia opened fire, it would be all over for him. Hearing that, his men dared not get any closer. "You stay right here. If you make any move, I'll kill you." Sylvia slowly backed away while keeping the submachine gun aimed at Quentin. With the gun behind him, he had no choice but to stand still, waiting for Sylvia to retreat. At the same time, his men dared not make a move as they watched her every step. They found it hard to believe that she had obtained a submachine gun, suspecting she was not an ordinary person. Just as Caspian and Zoe were about to get into the SUV, Sylvia caught up. She got into the driver's seat, and they drove away. At the Paradise Clubhouse, after Sylvia left, Quentin couldn't hold on any longer, collapsing on the ground due to his severe injuries. "Mr. Lane." The Flying Dragons members rushed to his side. "Mr. Lane, are you okay?" they asked with concern. Quentin was irritated. "Are you all blind? Do I look okay? Get me an ambulance. Mr. Lane, we can't let this slide. Those two killed so many of our men. We should go after them now and get our revenge for you and our brothers." One of his men suggested. "Forget it. Those two have some serious skills. Even if you go after them, it'll be death waiting for you," Quentin replied. Now he knew the capabilities of Caspian and Sylvia. If he wanted revenge, he needed a well-planned strategy. But we can't just let it slide, right? Of course not. But it's not time for revenge yet. We need to plan things out. Report what happened here to the Supreme Leader. Understood. In the SUV, Caspian found that Zoe still appeared scared, so he comforted her. "Relax. We're safe now." That scene was terrifying. So many people died, and there was blood everywhere. "I was scared to death," Zoe said. Puzzled, he asked, "How did you end up being captured by Quentin's men?" "I was out shopping, and then a car suddenly pulled up. A few people got out, and they just grabbed me into their car," she explained. "I see. Be more careful when you go out after this," Caspian advised. "Yeah, I know. But after what happened, I'm scared to be alone in my old place," Zoe expressed her concerns. After going through this, she was terrified of being taken away by Flying Dragons members again. Also, after witnessing such a gruesome scene, she now felt even more afraid about staying alone in her room. The image of corpses piled on the floor haunted her thoughts. "So, what are you going to do?" Caspian asked. "I want to move into your villa to be with Willow," Zoe replied. Sure, the villa had plenty of vacant rooms, and Zoe and Willow were best friends. So, it was fine for Zoe to move in and stay for a while. "Let me ask Willow first." Zoe felt that moving in without notice might be somewhat inappropriate. Before she made the call, Caspian told her, "Okay, but don't tell her about what happened, and definitely don't mention that we killed many people." "Why not?" Confused, she looked at him. "I don't want her to worry, so it's best to keep quiet," he explained. "But no matter what, I need a reason to tell her why I want to stay at the villa." "How can I do that without revealing anything?" Zoe inquired. "You two are such close friends. Do you really need more reasons to stay with her for a few days?" Caspian grinned. "That makes sense. By the way, thanks for tonight. If you hadn't been there, I can't imagine what would have happened." She looked at him gratefully. "No problem. You're Willow's best friend, so it was only right to save you," Caspian said casually. "Come to think of it now, it really was incredible. I was just kidnapped, and you appeared out of nowhere. Is this fate?" Zoe said. I would say it was a coincidence. You're a writer. You should know what a coincidence is, right?" he replied. "All right, you can call it what you want. I'll give Willow a call now." With that, she dialed Willow's number. She shared her idea of moving into the villa with Willow, who was not only okay with it but also excited. Willow felt that her villa was a bit empty, especially since her parents had moved out. Having Zoe move in would provide her with company. Following that, Caspian took Zoe back to her rented house to pack her things, including her laptop. As a writer, she couldn't afford to miss her writing commitments. She wasn't originally from South Lake City. She had come to the city after graduating from college. Despite having a steady income, she hadn't bought a house and had chosen to rent instead. Once Zoe was ready, Sylvia drove Caspian and Zoe to Riverside Villa and left right after dropping them off. Willow was thrilled to see Zoe. Zoe followed Caspian's advice by not mentioning the events of the evening. If Willow found out that Caspian and Sylvia had gone on a killing spree in Paradise Clubhouse, she would be terrified. On the other hand, the Flying Dragon's supreme leader, Garrett Johnson, was furious when he learned that Caspian and Sylvia had infiltrated Paradise Clubhouse and killed many of his men. Damn it. That Caspian dared to cause trouble in my territory and killed so many of my men. Does he think we're easy to mess with? If I don't seek revenge, how can the Flying Dragons continue to thrive in South Lake City? Mr. Johnson, I know some details. The reason Caspian went after Mr. Lane was because Mr. Lane killed Caspian's foster mother, one of his men explained. So what? What's the problem with us killing one person? No one dares to challenge us in South Lake City. If I don't kill Caspian, how can we maintain our reputation? And how can we make others respect us? Garrett's anger only grew as he spoke. Chapter 74, A Well-Thought-Out Plan. Mr. Johnson, Caspian dared to invade our territory with just one woman, which means they were well prepared and had significant strength. I believe we need a well-thought-out plan. Victor Lambert, the strategist of the Flying Dragons, said. Any suggestions, Mr. Lambert? Garrett asked. Victor, known for his strategic brilliance, had played a key role in helping the Flying Dragons eliminate all rival forces in South Lake City. With that, they became the top gang in the city. Naturally, his standing in the gang was second only to Garrett. Many times, Garrett relied on Victor's counsel. From what I know, Caspian also went to the York residence today and caused a scene at Mrs. York's senior soft birthday celebration. He defeated all the York family's experts and crippled Derek, their eldest son, before leaving. Victor explained. What does that have to do with us? Garrett inquired. Based on these two incidents, it's evident that Caspian possesses significant power. His boldness implies he has someone backing him up, Victor stated. While Caspian might be able to bring the York family to heel, our experts greatly outnumber theirs. We don't have to fear him at all, Garrett replied. Caspian alone may not pose a threat, but I'm worried about his potential connections, Victor said. Him? What kind of connections could a nobody like him have? Garrett asked. True, but I heard that last month, he held a wedding ceremony, and even South Eridland's senior military officer, John Anderson, attended it. Victor elaborated. If we provoke Caspian, and John intervenes, it will be impossible for us to continue living in South Lake City. You're right. What should we do, then? Garrett asked. Caspian has disabled Derek, so now the Yorks are likely to come after him. Let's first observe the situation, investigate Caspian's background, and then make a plan, Victor suggested. Okay, we'll follow your plan. We won't do anything for now, Garrett responded. Meanwhile, Quentin, who had been taken to the hospital, suddenly remembered something. His man, Wade Powell, had gone to confront Caspian earlier in the day and had not returned. He instructed his men to call Wade, but his phone was off. None of the others who had gone with Wade could be reached either. How could so many people go missing at the same time? Instantly, Quentin realized that Wade and his men might already be dead. At this realization, his face turned dark. The fact that Caspian dared to bring people to Paradise Clubhouse made it appear likely that he had dealt with Wade and the others. It was also the only explanation that made sense. At Riverside Villa, Willow noticed that Zoe seemed preoccupied and asked, Zoe, what's wrong? You seem a bit absent-minded. Zoe quickly made up a reason. I'm just thinking about the plot for my novel. She had experienced too much in the evening by witnessing the bloodshed at Paradise Clubhouse. With those images haunting her, she had trouble focusing on anything. Did you not update your novel today? Willow asked. Not yet. I was busy with something today. Zoe's mind was far from her writing at the moment. So, are you planning to write tonight, or should we just go to sleep? I'm feeling tired now, Willow asked. I'll write tomorrow. I'm feeling sleepy too, Zoe replied. But is there a room for me? What do you say we sleep together tonight? We can have a heart-to-heart talk, Willow proposed. Is that okay? What about Caspian? He might not be happy about it. After all, Caspian and Willow were a married couple, and Zoe's presence was already an intrusion into their private lives. It's fine. He won't mind. It's just for a few days anyway. He's not that petty, Willow reassured her. Okay, let's sleep together, then, Zoe agreed. After all, she didn't want to sleep alone tonight. Meanwhile, Caspian was consumed by thoughts of avenging his foster mother's death, so he was not in the mood to do anything with Willow. He went to sleep in the room next to Willow's. The next morning, Willow went to work at Southlake Corporation, while Zoe remained at the villa, working on her novel. Caspian felt it was quite weird with him and Zoe staying at the villa, so he asked Sylvia to drive him to his foster mother's old home in the countryside. He wanted to take a look and tidy up any remaining items. Actually, the two families each gifted a luxury car during the wedding. Willow had only driven the Bentley to work, so there was a Rolls-Royce Phantom at home. However, Caspian didn't feel like driving, which was why he had Sylvia come to pick him up. Upon returning to the countryside, he gazed melancholically at the empty house. He then entered Lilith's room and sorted through her belongings. In an iron chest, he found some medals that she had won during her Girl Scout days, along with a few yellowing commendation certificates. At that moment, Caspian couldn't help but shed a few tears. On the other hand, after Willow arrived at Southlake Corporation, the skilled hitman she had previously contacted got in touch with her. He informed her that he had now arrived in Southlake City and asked her to prepare $300,000 in cash. They were to meet at a location in the suburbs of Southlake City at 10:00 p.m. As long as the money was in place, the hitman would take care of Derek and Quentin. For Willow, a price of $150,000 for each of them was affordable. She had carefully reviewed the hitman's profile and knew that he was highly skilled, efficient, and left no traces, so she had no doubts about his abilities. After thinking it over, she decided to take a chance and spend the money to have the hitman eliminate Derek and Quentin, seeking revenge for Lilith. Willow believed that her actions would help alleviate some of her guilt. After all, it was her mother who had driven Lilith away that night, leading to the subsequent events. If Caspian were to find out that Lilith had been kicked out by her mother, he would surely be furious. By evening, Willow went to the bank to withdraw $300,000 in cash and place them in a secure lockbox. She then returned to the villa. Upon arrival, she only found Zoe at home and couldn't find Caspian. "Zoe, do you know where Caspian went?" she asked. "I don't know. He left long ago," Zoe replied absent-mindedly, fully engrossed in her work. Since she hadn't updated her novel yesterday, she was determined to catch up today, so she didn't have time to chat with Willow. Seeing Zoe busy, Willow didn't say much and prepared some food for herself. It was actually perfect that Caspian wasn't at home, because otherwise, she would have had to come up with an excuse to meet the hitman late at night. Chapter 75, Drawing a Snake Out Its Hole. Back in Lilith's house, Caspian was immersed in nostalgia. He'd spent all his childhood here in this little house happily. Caspian was engulfed by sorrow, and could not accept the sudden passing of Lilith, his foster mother. Sylvia stayed by Caspian's side. She could only accompany him because she did not know how to comfort him. The York family already knew that Caspian was just an ordinary soldier. However, they obtained news that Caspian and Sylvia went to Quentin's turf last night and killed many people. Since the flying dragons did not seem to react to that, the York family also dared not do anything recklessly. At the same time, the York family also feared Sylvia's position as a general officer. When they noticed Sylvia was being very respectful toward Caspian, they were even more cautious about taking action. They even wanted to wait for the flying dragons to make the first move. After all, the York family was not in a rush since there were still a few days to prepare. However, the flying dragons had Victor as their strategist, so they would not act directly. Both factions had the same idea. No one wanted to make the first move. Willow made dinner and ate with Zoe. After dinner, Zoe kept doing her own thing. Willow sat restlessly on the sofa alone. At 9:30 p.m., Willow said to Zoe, "Zoe, I need to go out." "What? It's so late. Do you need to go out?" Zoe asked in confusion. "It's none of your business. I'll come back later," said Willow. "Why don't I go with you?" Zoe was worried. It was unsafe for Willow to go out alone. "It's fine. Don't worry. Just do your work," said Willow. "Sure. Come back soon. Be careful on the way," said Zoe. Willow put the briefcase full of cash into her car and drove the Rolls-Royce to the outskirts of South Lake City to meet the assassin. Meanwhile, in Lilith's house, Sylvia spoke. "Lord Caspian, I got the news that the Corps outside of South Lake City are prepared to move. I've told you many times not to address me as Lord Caspian. Remember, ask them not to act recklessly and be on standby," Caspian said. "Yes, Caspian. Do you know who the leader of the Corps is?" asked Sylvia. "Aren't you the one who gathers all the information?" "How would I know?" Caspian said. "It is a group from the South Aridlands Division, led by the staff officer of the South Aridlands. War Zone, Julian Lawson," Sylvia said in agitation. "What? Why is Julian here in South Lake City instead of guarding the South Aridlands?" Caspian was shocked and asked. "The men from the South Aridlands knew Madame Ziegler was killed. All of them wanted to avenge her. They were all the men you led before. Each of them is strong enough to take on 10 men," Sylvia said. "That's too much. We don't need them to be here for a small matter like this. Ask them to return to the South Aridlands," Caspian said helplessly. Sending a group to South Lake City just to get rid of the York family and the flying dragons was overkill. The firepower was enough to destroy the city. "Caspian, since they are already here, let's ask them to wait outside the city. Besides, they came here because they've received an order from the higher-ups," Sylvia said. "Why would the higher-ups know about my foster mother's death?" Caspian asked. "Well, I told them," Sylvia lowered her head and said in a soft voice. "That's overkill. Bringing a few men over is enough to take care of the York family and the flying dragons. Why make a big fuss?" Caspian said. "These are the higher-ups' orders. They asked John to pick the men to stand outside of South Lake City. It also fulfilled the South Aridlands soldiers' request to avenge you," Sylvia said. "South Aridlands is peaceful now. If they want to stay, just let them stay," Caspian said. "I also got some news. Ezekiel Parker, the head of the Inspector General's office of South Lake City, lacks integrity. He worked with the Flying Dragons in secret and also helped the York family cover their tracks. Not only do we need to get rid of the York family and Flying Dragons, but also the Inspector General's office as well," said Sylvia. "We must get rid of the head of the Inspector General's office. He must not harm South Lake City anymore," Caspian said. "Caspian, the troops have already gathered here. They are waiting for your orders to drive into South Lake City and wipe out the York family and Flying Dragons, so they can avenge Madame Ziegler," Sylvia said. "Calm down. We will wait until they make the first move. According to our previous plan, we must discover their whole network and get rid of them once and for all," Caspian said. "Both of us went to the York family and wiped out many men from the Flying Dragons. They still haven't made their move after a whole day. How long will this take?" Sylvia asked. "In my opinion, your position as a general officer must have scared them. That is why they have yet to make their move," Caspian said. "What? I see." Sylvia suddenly realized the truth. "It's simple. You've been following me and obeying my orders. They are not fools and surely saw something wrong with that. With someone like you by my side, they won't do anything to me. Caspian said. Sounds reasonable. What should we do now? Sylvia asked. During the wedding, your appearance was too flashy. You attended fully geared up. Everyone in South Lake City knew who you were. I'm sure they won't take any action recklessly, Caspian said. Is there any way to solve this? Sylvia asked. Of course, Caspian said with a nod. I'm willing to do anything as long as we can get rid of all of them, Sylvia said. You must let everyone know that you are pretending to be a general officer, Caspian said. What? But I am real. How can I make them think I'm a fake? Sylvia was taken aback before asking Caspian. You need to think of that yourself. You can invite some media and reveal that your identity is fake. Your medals were also fake. You faked everything, Caspian said. Do I need to make myself look like a liar? Sylvia asked. You have to. If you want to force them to take action, you must remove their doubts. So, you must endure some injustice, Caspian said. Fine. You've been hiding your identity as the Diaturanian god of war. I'm just a general officer, so I don't mind feeling aggrieved. I will find someone to make some reports and tell the whole South Lake City that my identity is fake, Sylvia said with a wry smile. Chapter 76, True Colors. When everything is settled in South Lake City, we will reveal your identity and clear your name, Caspian said to Sylvia. Caspian, it's late. Let's leave. Sylvia nodded and reminded Caspian after looking outside. Sure. Caspian looked at his watch and realized it was already 10 p.m. Later, Sylvia helped Caspian tidy up Lilith's belongings and put the items into the SUV. As they were leaving, they realized a Rolls-Royce driving past the gates of the residence and into the woods nearby. Caspian, that car looks familiar. Isn't it Willow's Rolls-Royce Phantom? Sylvia asked after she thought the car looked familiar. It was not her first time seeing the car, so she remembered it. That's right. Caspian also realized the Rolls-Royce which belonged to Willow. It's already 10. Why is Willow here? Sylvia asked. Are you asking me? How would I know? Caspian was confused as well. He wondered if Willow was having an affair when he was not at home. Sylvia thought the same, but she dared not voice out her suspicions. Should we go take a look? Sylvia asked. Wait here. I'll go and see what she's trying to do, Caspian said indifferently. Fine. I'll wait for you here. Sylvia wanted to know what Willow was planning to do. Caspian approached the woods to see what was going on. Willow did not know where Lilith's house was. She also did not know that the place where she was going to meet the assassin was near Lilith's house. She drove into the woods according to the address given to her by the assassin. However, she realized the place was empty. It did not look like a car had been here as well. It was past 10 p.m. The moonlight was covered by the foliage, and there was mist around the area. It was foggy in the woods, which gave the whole place a terrifying atmosphere. It felt like someone would come out rushing through the fog. It was Willow's first time coming to such a place alone. She felt a chill run down her spine and felt unsafe. She did not understand why the assassin would choose such a deserted place to meet her. She also wondered if all assassins were weird. Hello? Is anyone there? Willow shouted. Blood Shadow, are you there? Blood Shadow was the assassin's nickname. Calling out that nickname at this place would make someone feel even more afraid. Willow's heart was shrouded by unexplainable fear. I've been waiting for you. Did you bring the thing? A low voice could be heard suddenly. It sounded ethereal, as if a ghost had spoken. Willow was towing out of her and looked around. I brought it. Where are you? Come out. Willow stuttered. All right. 30 seconds later, Willow SMA Shadow coming out. The shadow was covered in black overalls. Only his eyes could be seen. Willow finally met Blood Shadow. However, his outfit was scary and made Willow even more terrified. Blood Shadow saw how sexy Willow was. His eyes were filled with excitement. Where's the money? Blood Shadow asked. It's in the car. Can you really help me get rid of the eldest grandson of the York family, Derek York, and the leader of the Flying Dragons, Quentin Lane? Willow asked. Blood Shadow. Always kill without being seen. I've done many jobs and have never failed my mission. The Yours family and the flying dragons are nothing to be afraid of. With enough money, I can even get rid of all of them tonight, Blood Shadow said confidently. Fine. I'll bring the money now. Willow opened the car door and brought out the briefcase. The $300,000 are all here in cash. You can check it, Willow said, after handing the briefcase over to the assassin. Blood Shadow took the briefcase and opened it since it was not locked. He grinned when he saw all the cash inside. He took out a stack of bills and looked at it in detail. Then, he kept the briefcase and said, "No problem. News of Derek and Quentin's death will be all over South Lake City tomorrow." "What if you fail?" Willow asked worriedly. "Fail? Are you doubting me?" Blood Shadow was annoyed. "No, I'm not doubting you. I just want to tell you that even if you fail, I don't want you to tell everyone that I've hired you." It was Willow's first time hiring an assassin. She did not want to be found out if the assassin failed his assassination. "Don't worry. I've never failed. Killing 2 people is an easy job. If I can't even deal with someone like Derek and Quentin, I'm not fit to become an assassin," Blood Shadow said arrogantly. "That's a relief. I'll be depending on you," Willow said. "However, I'm not only doing this for money. I have other requests," Blood Shadow said while staring at Willow. "What is it? Why didn't you tell me about it when we discussed this?" Willow could sense the assassin's perverted gaze and felt something was wrong. "Sleep with me for 1 night. I'll help you kill them all if I'm satisfied," Blood Shadow said after showing his true colors. Willow was scared and quickly took a few steps back. She said in an annoyed tone, "Don't even think about it. I will never agree to this." That was when Willow realized she might have been scammed. Yesterday, Caspian reminded her that there were many fake assassins. Professional assassins were rare. Willow wondered if Caspian guessed it correctly, and if she had been scammed. "Whether you agree or not is not for you to decide," Blood Shadow approached Willow and said as his eyes scanned Willow's body. Before Willow tried to get into her car and escape, Blood Shadow rushed in front of her and slammed the car door. Willow's face was pale. It was almost impossible for her to escape now. Chapter 77, right in front of you. Blood Shadow pounced on Willow. Willow reacted quickly. She turned around and wanted to run out of the woods. Blood Shadow went after Willow when he saw her trying to escape. "Girl, where are you trying to go?" Blood Shadow shouted as he gave pursuit. "Help! Is anyone out there? Help!" Willow kept running and asking for help without looking back. Willow thought no one would save her in such a deserted place. As she heard Blood Shadow's footsteps closing in, she knew she could no longer escape. She would die if the perverted man got his hands on her in such a place. Willow regretted her actions so much. If she had listened to Caspian, she would not have been scammed and in this situation. Then, she saw a huge tree in front of her. She wanted to knock her head onto the tree and commit suicide. It was better than being captured by the assassin. Suddenly, a shadow appeared and stopped Willow. She was shocked. She thought she was captured by the assassin and started to struggle. "Let go of me, you bastard!" Willow shouted while she struggled. "What happened, honey?" Willow heard a familiar voice. She was dumbfounded and turned around to see that it was Caspian who was hugging her. "Caspian, why are you here?" Willow was surprised and happy to see him. She did not expect to see Caspian at her moment of despair. "I was only passing by coincidentally," Caspian said. Caspian followed Willow all the way here. He wanted to see what she was doing, so he hid behind a large tree. After waiting for a while, he saw Willow running toward him before he could realize what happened. "Who are you?" Blood Shadow was scared when he saw a hunky man appearing suddenly. "I am her husband, Caspian," Caspian said. Blood Shadow was taken aback. He never expected Willow's husband to appear there. After all, Willow mentioned she would come alone when they were discussing this. "Who are you?" Caspian asked in a cold voice. "I am the cold-blooded assassin, Blood Shadow," Blood Shadow said. Then, Caspian suddenly remembered what Willow told him yesterday. She wanted to find an assassin to get rid of Derek and Quentin. He finally realized Willow came to the woods to do business with this assassin. Nonsense. I've never heard of someone like you, Caspian said with disdain. I always keep a low profile. I won't let people find out my identity easily, Blood Shadow said. Willow, is this the assassin you spent a lot of money to hire? Caspian asked. That's right, Willow stuttered when she answered. She had not gotten over her fear yet. Caspian was wondering how someone like that could be called an assassin. Weren't you dealing with the assassin? Why are you running out of the woods? Caspian was confused. He still could not figure out what happened. This man was evil. He took my money and even wanted. Willow paused and blushed. She dared not finish her sentence. What did he want to do? Caspian asked while looking at the assassin. He wanted me to spend the night with him. Willow finally mustered up her courage and told Caspian. Caspian was furious at the assassin for laying eyes on his wife. However, he was also helpless about that since his wife was the prettiest woman in all of South Lake City. I advise you to turn a blind eye to this. As long as your wife serves me well tonight, I will forgive all of you. Otherwise, neither of you may leave tonight, Blood Shadow said viciously. You really talk a lot of nonsense. Why don't I verify if you really are a qualified assassin? Caspian said with a gloomy face. If you have a death wish, I'll fulfill it for you. Blood Shadow got into a fighting stance after that. Crane wings, the assassin shouted, and did a set of combat maneuvers. It did seem like he was quite capable. Be careful, he is very powerful, Willow reminded Caspian when she saw Blood Shadow trying to attack Caspian. Caspian did not react. He wanted to see what the assassin was capable of. However, the assassin kept repeating the crane wing stance without any intention to attack. Are you done with your farce? Caspian said impatiently. Blood Shadow knew he could no longer drag it out. He had to attack no matter what. He shouted and rushed toward Caspian while flailing his arms and legs. Willow saw how vicious the assassin was and hid behind Caspian while holding his arm. However, Caspian was calm when faced with the attack. He quickly lifted his right leg and kicked Blood Shadow. Willow was amazed at how weak the assassin was after everything he boasted. He could not even endure a kick from Caspian. It seemed like Willow had really been scammed. Blood Shadow hit a tree and coughed out blood. He fell on the floor and lay motionless. Willow was very disappointed. The man in front of him did not look like an assassin at all. Is this the assassin you talked about? I think he looks like a clown from the circus instead, Caspian said helplessly. Well, Willow was rendered speechless. She did not know whether Caspian was too strong or the assassin was too weak. Don't simply trust anything you read online in the future. There aren't many great assassins out there. The greatest person is right in front of you. Caspian used this opportunity to teach Willow a lesson. He hoped she could be more cautious so something like this would not happen in the future. The greatest person is right in front of me. Are you talking about you? Willow asked Caspian in shock. Who else? Caspian answered helplessly. He wondered when Willow became a pretty fool since she was usually quite diligent at work. Willow had no reply to Caspian's answer. She did forget how great Caspian was. Sylvia rushed to the scene as well. Caspian, what happened? Sylvia asked with concern. She heard Willow's screams and rushed over immediately. Chapter 78. Isn't it a bit too cruel? A scumbag assassin was trying to take advantage of Willow, Caspian said with a calm face. An assassin? Where? Sylvia was shocked and asked. Over there. I sent him flying after a kick, Caspian said and pointed at the man lying under a faraway tree. How daring of him to take advantage of Willow. I'll go teach him a lesson now. Sylvia walked over toward the assassin. Do you want to know what the assassin you hired looks like? Caspian asked Willow. Sure. With Caspian by her side, Willow was no longer afraid. She wanted to see the assassin's face. Blood Shadow lay motionless on the ground. When he saw Caspian and Sylvia approaching him, he trembled out of fear. He was very scared of how strong Caspian was. Sylvia stood in front of the man and removed his black overalls. His perverted face was exposed immediately. Willow frowned after she saw the assassin's face. She did not want to see him anymore. She was afraid, and felt lucky at the same time to have Caspian rescuing her. Otherwise, she would rather die than be captured by someone like the assassin. "How much money did you spend on hiring this guy?" Caspian asked in disdain. $300,000. Willow was embarrassed and said softly, "How is this guy worth that much money? You are such an easy target." Caspian felt helpless. Willow blushed when she heard that. "Who are you?" Caspian stared and asked at the assassin. Sir, I'm just a hooligan. I'll return the money to you. Please forgive me, and let me go," the assassin begged. "Now you know that he is a complete fraud," Caspian said while looking at Willow. Willow did not know what to do and quickly explained, "I wanted to avenge Mom and didn't think too much. Who knew I would fall for it?" "Did you tell him about wanting to kill Derek and Quentin?" Caspian asked. "I did. I told him everything," Willow said embarrassingly. "I told you to forget about revenge. I have my own plans for that." Caspian did not want to scold Willow anymore since she only did it out of kindness. "I understand." Willow lowered her head and felt very embarrassed. This incident had taught her a lesson. "Caspian, what should I do with this guy?" Sylvia stared at the assassin and asked. "He knows too much, and even tried to take advantage of Willow. If we let people like him go, he might continue to scam someone else. Why not kill him, so he can't do that ever again?" Caspian said strictly with a gloomy face. Willow heard Caspian's solution, and thought it was the same during the meeting. She wondered if they were going to kill the assassin. "I understand." Sylvia nodded. Then, she dragged the assassin into the depths of the woods. "What are you doing? Let me go. Let me go now. I'll give all my money to you." Blood Shadow realized he was in trouble, and begged for forgiveness. "You reap what you sow," Caspian said casually without any pity. "Caspian, are you going to kill him?" Willow asked with astonishment. "Leaving people like him alive will only harm society. There's no need to pity people like him," Caspian said. "But, isn't it a bit too cruel?" Willow said with a sad face. "Cruel? Do you know what would have happened if I didn't appear in time? Who knows how many people had been scammed by him? People like him don't deserve any pity," Caspian said indignantly. Willow had no response to that. She knew Caspian was right. The assassin would only do bad things if he was kept alive. She did not know how many people were being scammed. After all, not everyone could be as lucky as her and be saved by Caspian. "Let's go. I'll send you back home." Caspian knew Willow had experienced a shock, so he tried to send her back to Riverside Villa. "Sure." Willow nodded. She did not want to stay there anymore. Willow took the briefcase and sat in the passenger seat. Caspian sat in the driver's seat. He would be driving. "Did you tail me?" Willow asked as soon as she sat in the car. "Why would I tail you? Can you stop thinking that people are so filthy?" Caspian thought what Willow said was a little ridiculous. "Why did you appear in front of me when I was in danger?" Willow was confused. "I came to my late foster mother's home to tidy up her belongings. When I wanted to go back, I saw you driving past, so I wanted to see what you were trying to do," Caspian explained. "What? Is Mom's house here?" Willow was astonished. "That's right. It's in front. Not too far away from here," Caspian said. "That is such a coincidence," Willow said. Thankfully, Caspian had appeared. Otherwise, Willow did not know what would have happened. She was terrified when she remembered that man's disgusting face. "I think this is so coincidental. When I go back, I must tell Zoe. Perhaps she will get some inspiration from this," Willow said. "Are you sure you want to tell people such an embarrassing thing?" Caspian asked helplessly. Willow thought about it, and thought Caspian was right. If Zoe found out she was fooled by a hooligan, Zoe would surely make fun of her. Caspian stopped beside the SUV and moved all of Lilith's belongings to the Rolls-Royce. Sylvia came back as well. From the calm look on her face, it was obvious that she'd gotten rid of the scumbag. "I'll send Willow back. Go and do what you must," Caspian said to Sylvia. "Sure, Caspian," Sylvia said with a nod. After that, Caspian drove the Rolls-Royce and took Willow back to the villa. Zoe completed her work when Caspian and Willow returned to the villa. "Willow, I was wondering where you went. Turns out you went to pick up Caspian. I do envy both of you," Zoe said excitedly. "Nonsense. I didn't go and pick him up purposely. I only met him on my way back," Willow blushed and quickly explained. She was too embarrassed to tell Zoe that she was scammed. "Look how red your face is. I won't be disturbing you two tonight. I've tidied up a room so I will be sleeping alone." Zoe laughed and said, "Won't you sleep with me?" Willow was afraid after what she experienced. She wanted someone to accompany her. She did not expect Zoe to not sleep with her. "I don't want to be a third wheel. Just spend your time with Caspian," Zoe said. "What nonsense are you spouting? Since you are here, Willow felt even more embarrassed. "Willow, are you trying to say that both of you want to do something, and it's inconvenient if I'm in the room?" Zoe said with a grin. "Don't talk nonsense." Willow was embarrassed. "I'm not talking nonsense. I'm telling the truth," Zoe said. "I don't care. You must sleep with me tonight. Otherwise, I won't call you my bestie anymore," Willow said in an annoyed tone. "Fine. I'm the one who is living under someone else's roof after all. Caspian, don't blame me for spoiling your moment," Zoe said. "Whatever. We have all the time in the world," Caspian said with a smile. So, Zoe and Willow slept in a room. Suddenly, there was a scream in the room at night. "Help! No. Don't come here." Caspian woke up from his slumber and realized it came from Willow's room. Chapter 79 Deal with Caspian. Caspian was shocked. He wondered if someone had infiltrated the villa. With that thought in mind, Caspian did not hesitate and jumped out of his bed. He ran to Willow's room without wearing a shirt. Caspian opened the door easily and switched on the lights. When the lights were opened, Caspian looked around and realized nothing unusual was going on. Only Willow and Zoe were in the bed in their very seductive lacy pajamas. Caspian was confused. Why did they shout when there was nothing in the room? "Help!" Willow and Zoe screamed again. Caspian looked closely and realized both of them were frowning with sweat on their foreheads. He finally knew what happened. Both Willow and Zoe were having nightmares. "Hey, what's going on with you two? Wake up!" Caspian shouted while shaking Willow. Both Willow and Zoe woke up in a daze after Caspian shouted a few times. When they realized Caspian was standing in front of them in only his underwear, they screamed, "You rascal! What are you doing?" Zoe covered her eyes with his hand. "Caspian, how dare you do such a filthy thing? Get out now!" Willow shouted, and hit Caspian with a pillow beside her. Caspian was helpless and quickly explained himself. "You've misunderstood. I heard both of you screaming just now. I thought something happened and rushed here to see what happened. Did you two dream of something scary?" When Willow and Zoe heard what Caspian said, they finally remembered that they'd had nightmares. Willow was tricked by the assassin into the woods, and Zoe experienced something totally different. That was why both of them had nightmares that night. So what if we had nightmares? That does not mean you can just simply come in. "Zoe is here," Willow said. "That's right. Why did you come in without knocking? Luckily, I'm wearing my pajamas. Otherwise, you'd have seen me naked," Zoe let go and said to Caspian angrily. Although both of them were annoyed that Caspian rushed into their room, they could not move their gaze away from Caspian's body. Caspian was half naked on top. His muscular body was exposed, and the scars on his body made him seem manlier. Although Willow had slept with Caspian previously, it was her first time seeing Caspian's body so clearly. As for Zoe, she was staring straight at Caspian. She did not expect Caspian to be so muscular. It was no wonder he was so strong. Both of them were getting more excited as they looked up and down Caspian's body. Caspian felt uncomfortable with their stares, so he turned around and left after saying, "What a waste of my kindness." He figured the longer he stayed, he might be devoured by the two women. They had very greedy gazes. After Caspian left, Willow and Zoe could not calm down for a long time. Caspian's body was on their minds. Every woman would be attracted to a body like his. "Zoe, did you have a nightmare too?" Willow looked at Zoe beside her and asked. "I dreamed of a very bloody scene. There were dead people everywhere," Zoe said with fear. "I dreamed of myself entering a mysterious forest that was foggy. I couldn't get out of the forest no matter what," Willow said while wiping away the sweat on her forehead. "That was weird. We actually had nightmares together," Zoe said. "It's really weird." Willow shook her head and did not know why something like that would happen. Caspian's body was the only thing on Zoe's mind now. He knew Caspian was Willow's husband, and she should not have any thoughts about him. However, the more she thought about that, the more she could not get rid of Caspian in her mind. News had spread all over South Lake City. Every media outlet was talking about Sylvia's fake identity as a general officer. She was exposed as a normal soldier who followed Caspian around. The news caused an uproar in South Lake City. The York family and the Flying Dragons felt relief when they heard the news. The head of the York family, Nadia, immediately gathered the whole family for a meeting. "The news is all over the place. Sylvia, who was beside Caspian, was a fake general. What do you think of this, everyone?" Nadia asked. "They were only pretending. If her identity is fake, that's easy. We no longer have any worries." Caspian caused havoc in the York family. He crippled Derek and hurt many experts of the York family. "If we don't take revenge, there won't be a place for the York family in South Lake City in the future," Samuel said. "The York family is the largest family in South Lake City after all. If we don't retaliate after a good, nothing like Caspian comes crashing on our turf, everyone else will think the York family is a pushover." "Exactly. No matter what, we must cripple Caspian. Let him pay for his actions and show him the might of the York family. The York family is full of talents. How can we allow Caspian to bully us? Granny, give us your orders. We will definitely kill him and avenge Derek." Everyone was furious and mentioned their views. All of them wanted to teach Caspian a lesson. "All right. We will get rid of Caspian and increase the York family's reputation." Nadia had her ways as the leader of the York family. She hesitated to take action because of Sylvia's identity. Otherwise, they would not give Caspian so much time. However, Caspian isn't a pushover. He knows martial arts. "To be safe, we must come up with a plan to get rid of him," Nadia said. Even an expert like Steve could not defend against Caspian. It showed how terrifying he was. "Mom, how do you plan to deal with Caspian?" Samuel asked. Caspian went to the Flying Dragons and wreaked havoc there. He also killed many of Flying Dragon's men. I'm sure they also want to take revenge on Caspian. Now that news of Sylvia's fake identity has been exposed, I'm sure the Flying Dragons will also make a move soon," Nadia said. "Are you saying that we will work with the Flying Dragons to deal with Caspian?" Samuel asked. "That's right. I will call Garrett to discuss a plan to deal with Caspian right now." At the Flying Dragons, Garrett and Victor also received news that Sylvia was a fake general officer. With no more worries, they quickly gathered the members to deal with Caspian. Apart from the superiors at the Flying Dragons, there were also 2 leaders and 2 protectors who were in charge of the 4 directions of South Lake City. With Quentin heavily injured and still recovering, only the other 3 could be gathered for this meeting. The 2 protectors and the remaining leader decided unanimously to wipe out Caspian to increase the gang's prestige. Garrett and Victor were brazen now that they knew Sylvia was a fake. Then, Garrett's phone rang. It was a call from the York family. Chapter 80, Kill Him. Nadia discussed it with Garrett for a while. She wanted to partner up with the Flying Dragons to deal with Caspian. Garrett already had plans to get rid of Caspian. Now that the York family wanted to be their ally, Garrett had no reason to decline. So, Garrett told Victor to devise a detailed plan to deal with Caspian. As the brain of the flying dragons, Victor quickly formulated a plan. Garrett was very pleased with Victor's proposal. Garrett relayed the plans to Nadia. She also strongly agreed to this plan. The York family and the flying dragons hit it off right away. They decided on the exact moves they would make to deal with Caspian. The Stewart family was disappointed to hear that Caspian was only an ordinary guard. In the end, even the mid-level officer who came with Caspian was fake. Everyone was even more disappointed now. That Caspian is a good for nothing, and he will always be useless. I thought that his friend would be a capable officer, but even Sylvia's identity was fake. How shameful, Marilyn said. Who would have thought of that? We thought he was so amazing at his wedding last time. He even had high-ranking officers attending his wedding. But who knows? He just wanted to look good. Everything was fake, Carl said, shaking his head. Let's not count on him anymore. It's more reliable if we try to get on Willow's good side instead, Marilyn said. Alicia and Henry had talked to her last time, but she never intended to help us. Also, she has now moved into the villa and is living with Caspian. She's no longer part of our family, so why would she want to help us? Donald said. I didn't think Willow would be so cruel. We're still family, after all. She wouldn't ignore the Stewart family completely. Marilyn said, Grandma, are you saying that we should keep begging Willow? Henry asked. Exactly. Willow is a project manager in South Lake City. It's such a valuable connection, so how can we not make use of it? If we partner up with South Lake Corporation, our family will soar to great heights, Marilyn said. But we begged her last time, and she still refused to help, Henry said, feeling a little helpless. That's because you didn't look sincere enough last time. That's why Willow didn't want to help you. If you show some sincerity, she won't be so heartless anymore. Marilyn already had an ideal in her mind. Do you have any plans, Grandma? Henry asked again. I'm planning to hold a family banquet tomorrow night. Then, I'll invite Willow, Caspian, Alicia, and Richard to the banquet. We'll beg Willow for help together. I'm sure she'll be moved. Marilyn explained. Fine, that's all we can do for now. Nodding, Donald spoke. Carl, you're Willow's father, so please be nicer with your words tomorrow. She should want to listen to you, Marilyn said to Carl, who had been silent at the side. Okay. Carl was the eldest son in the family, but his status was quite ordinary. After all, he didn't have any sons. He was like an invisible man in the Stewart family, and he would never speak up during family meetings. To help Willow get used to the company as soon as possible, Miranda personally guided her. After all, it hadn't been long since Willow joined the company. But because of Lilith's matters, things were delayed for a long time. The work she had on hand was falling behind as well. She greatly valued her position as the project manager at South Lake Corporation. So, she wanted to get used to the company as soon as possible. That was why she often worked overtime at the company. Just then, Willow's phone rang. Willow picked it up to have a look. It was a call from Caspian. What's the matter? Willow asked. It's so late already. Haven't you gotten off work? Checking the time, Caspian realized that it was almost 10:00 p.m., but Willow still hadn't returned to the villa. So, he called her to ask about her situation. I'm still at work right now. Hearing Caspian's concern for her, Willow instantly felt warmth in her heart. Don't overwork yourself. Come home soon, Caspian said caringly. Got it. I'll go back in a bit. The company was almost deserted at that moment, and Willow was also planning to return to the villa. I'll pick you up, Caspian offered. It's okay. I drove to work today. I'll get home soon. It was getting late, so Willow didn't want Caspian to make the extra trip. All right. I'll be waiting for you to come back, Caspian replied. After hanging up, Willow left the company. She was getting ready to drive away. But when Willow was about to get into the car, two men suddenly leaped out of the car beside her. Willow was so startled that she didn't know what to do. Before she could react, the two men dragged her into the Maserati at the side. "Who are you? What are you trying to do?" Willow shouted. "Shut up. Stay put, or I'll kill you." At that moment, a man produced a gun, holding it against Willow as he spoke. Willow was shocked out of her wits. When she realized that he had a gun, she didn't dare move an inch. The car immediately started up. The Maserati sped onto the road. "What are you trying to do? Where are you taking me?" It was only then that Willow sensed some sort of danger. She asked in fear, "Quit yapping. You'll find out later," the armed man said. Willow was terrified, but she didn't have any way to fight back at the moment. Half an hour later, the car drove up to an unfinished building in the northern suburbs of South Lake City. Then, Willow saw a huge crowd gathered near the building. At least 200 people were gathered there, and they were all equipped with guns and blades. Willow was stunned when she saw that. Even if they wanted to kidnap her, they didn't have to get a whole army to do it. "Get out of the car," the armed man said fiercely. Seeing a scene like that, Willow didn't dare protest. She obediently got out of the car. She had just gotten out of the car when those people surrounded her. Every one of those people had a dragon tattooed across their shoulder. Willow realized then that they were all members of the Flying Dragons. "Mr. Wright, we got the woman." The armed man spoke to a man with long hair. The man with hair draping over his shoulders was the master of the Flying Dragons in the north, Skylar Wright. "Good." Skylar praised them. "What are you planning to do?" Willow didn't expect that the Flying Dragons would capture her. Her tone was fearful. "Miss Stewart, Wright, call your useless husband and tell him to come here within 30 minutes. If not, you'll be dead," Skylar ordered. "Why do you want him here? What are you trying to do?" Willow didn't expect him to make such a request. "We're trying to kill him," Skylar said viciously.